My fiancée texted, "I expect a $45,000 wedding ring." I replied, "You'll get what you deserve." Then I gave her a plastic one. Her reaction went viral, and 72 hours later, she was begging to apologize. I, 29M, thought I knew the woman I was going to marry. Turns out, I was dead wrong. The text came through at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. My fiancé had sent me a link to a ring that cost more than most people's cars, followed by a simple demand. "I expect a $45,000 wedding ring." No, please. No explanation. Just an expectation wrapped in entitlement. I stared at the screen for a full minute, wondering if this was some kind of joke. We'd been together for 3 years, engaged for 6 months, and I thought I knew her priorities. Apparently, I'd been living in a fantasy. I typed back quickly, "You'll get what you deserve." She responded with heart emojis, completely missing the edge in my words. That's when I knew she had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I started planning. Not the wedding. That ship had sailed the moment she decided my love could be measured in carats and zeros. I was planning something much more educational. First, I did some digging. Our joint credit card statements revealed a pattern I'd been too blind to see. Designer bags, expensive spa treatments, weekend trips with her girlfriends that I'd been unknowingly funding. She'd been treating my money like her personal ATM for months. Then I checked our shared savings account, the one we'd been building for our future home. Half of it was gone. When I called the bank, they confirmed she'd made several large withdrawals over the past 2 months. The wedding planning had become her shopping spree. I spent the rest of the week gathering evidence and making preparations. Meanwhile, she kept sending me pictures of different expensive rings, each one more outrageous than the last. She'd even started showing them to her friends, bragging about how generous her future husband was going to be. Saturday came, the day I'd promised to take her ring shopping. She spent 2 hours getting ready, probably imagining the Instagram photos she'd post later. I picked her up, wearing my best smile and my most expensive watch. Had to look the part for what was coming. We drove to the jewelry district downtown. She was practically vibrating with excitement, talking non-stop about which ring would look best with her engagement photos. I made all the right noises, agreeing that yes, she deserved the best, and yes, money was no object for the woman I loved. The first jewelry store was exactly what she'd hoped for. Gleaming cases full of diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. The sales associate recognized expensive tastes immediately and began showing us their premium collection. My fiancé went straight for the most expensive pieces, trying them on and posing for selfies. She kept looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to nod and pull out my credit card. Instead, I asked thoughtful questions about clarity and cut, playing the role of the careful but generous buyer. After an hour of this, I suggested we check out a few more stores before making such an important decision. She agreed, probably thinking I wanted to make sure I was getting her the absolute best. Store number 2 was more of the same. She found another ring that cost more than my car and started talking about how perfect it would look in the wedding photos. The sales associate was already preparing the paperwork when I suggested we take a lunch break to discuss it. Over expensive sushi that she ordered without looking at prices. She laid out her vision for our wedding. The venue she wanted cost $20,000 more than we budgeted. The dress she'd picked out required 3 fittings in New York. The photographer she'd hired was apparently the most exclusive in the state. I listened and nodded, mentally calculating how much debt she expected me to take on for one day. When she asked what I thought, I told her it all sounded perfect. and that she deserved nothing but the best. That afternoon, I told her I had a surprise. Instead of another jewelry store, I drove to a small shop in an older part of town. She looked confused as we pulled up to what was clearly not a high-end establishment. I explained that I'd heard they had some unique vintage pieces and thought she might want to see something different. She reluctantly agreed, probably humoring what she thought was my quirky side. Inside, the shop was cramped and filled with estate jewelry, antique watches, and curiosities. The elderly owner looked up from his workbench and smiled when I approached. I'd been here earlier in the week to make arrangements. I told my fiancée I wanted to show her something special, and led her to a small display case in the back. Inside was a simple plastic ring, the kind you might find in a gumball machine. It was bright pink with a large, obviously fake diamond. She laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. Then I picked up the ring and got down on one knee. The shop went completely silent. My fiancée's smile faded as she realized I was serious. I told her this was her engagement ring, exactly what she deserved. Her face went through several emotions before settling on confusion and anger. She demanded to know what I was doing. I explained that over the past week, I discovered her secret withdrawals from our savings account. I'd seen the credit card statements showing thousands of dollars in purchases she'd hidden from me. I'd realized that she saw me not as a partner, but as a bank account with benefits. The plastic ring, I explained, represented exactly how much I valued someone who valued only my money. Her voice rose as she insisted she loved me, not my money. I asked her then to name one thing she'd planned for our wedding that cost less than $1,000. One compromise she'd made for our shared financial future. One time, she considered what I might want, instead of what would look best on social media. She couldn't answer. The shop owner, who'd been pretending to work on a watch repair, was clearly enjoying the drama. A couple of other customers had wandered over, drawn by the commotion. My fiancée's face was red now, a combination of embarrassment and rage. She knocked the plastic ring out of my hand and stormed toward the door, shouting that I was humiliating her and that she'd never forgive me. I called after her that the engagement was off, and she could keep the plastic ring as a reminder of what greed gets you. She slammed the door so hard the whole shop rattled. But I wasn't done yet. Update 1. What my ex-fiancée didn't know was that her best friend had been recording the whole thing from outside the shop window. She'd been in on my plan from the beginning. Turns out, she'd been getting tired of hearing about expensive wedding plans while struggling to pay her own bills. The video was online within an hour. My ex had been so focused on her Instagram image that she'd never considered how humiliating her behavior might look to strangers. The footage showed her trying on expensive rings, dismissing cheaper options with visible disgust, and finally losing her mind over a plastic ring. The internet is not kind to people who appear greedy and entitled. By evening, the video had thousands of views and hundreds of comments, most of them roasting her attitude and behavior. Someone had even turned her ring tantrum into a meme. She called me that night crying and demanding I make her friend take down the video. I reminded her that she was no longer my problem, and that maybe this would be a learning experience. She spent the next day calling and texting, alternating between threats and apologies. First, she'd threatened to sue me for public humiliation. Then, she'd cry and say she really did love me and money didn't matter. Then she'd get angry again and call me pathetic for not being able to afford what she deserved. I blocked her number after the 15th message. Update 2. By Wednesday morning, the video had gone viral. It wasn't just on social media anymore. Local news stations had picked it up as a human interest story about modern relationships and financial expectations. The story was being shared with headlines like "Gold Digger Gets Plastic Ring" and "Man's Perfect Revenge on Materialistic Fiancé." My ex was mortified. Her social media accounts, which had been carefully curated to show off her lifestyle, were flooded with comments from strangers calling her a gold digger, and worse. She'd made the mistake of having her full name and workplace visible on her profiles. Her boss apparently called her in for a conversation about her online presence affecting the company's image. She worked at a high-end marketing firm where image was everything, and being known as the greedy fiancé from that viral video wasn't exactly helping her professional reputation. Meanwhile, I was getting friend requests and messages from people supporting what they called my perfect revenge. Several women reached out to share their own stories about partners who cared more about money than love. A few men thanked me for showing them what red flags to watch for. The elderly shop owner called to tell me the story was being shared in jewelry circles, and he'd had dozens of people come and asking to see the plastic ring from the video. He was considering making it a permanent display, but the best part was yet to come. Update 3. Thursday afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my ex calling from her friend's phone because I blocked her everywhere else. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her at first. She begged me to meet her somewhere private. She said she needed to apologize and explain that the whole thing had gotten out of hand, and she'd made a terrible mistake. She promised she'd changed and realized what really mattered. Part of me was curious to see how far she'd go. So, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown somewhere public, where she couldn't make a scene. She looked awful. Her usual perfect appearance was gone. No makeup, hair in a messy ponytail, wearing clothes that looked like she'd slept in them. She'd been staying at her friend's place because reporters had found her apartment and were asking neighbors about the viral video. She started by apologizing for everything: the secret spending, the expensive wedding plans, the entitled attitude about the ring. She claimed she'd been influenced by social media and wedding shows, that she'd lost sight of what was important. She said she loved me and would be happy with a simple courthouse wedding and a ring from a vending machine if it meant we could be together. I listened without saying much, watching her performance, because that's what it was. A performance. She was saying everything she thought I wanted to hear, but there was something calculating in her eyes. She kept glancing around the coffee shop, probably worried about being recognized. When she finished her speech, she asked what it would take for me to forgive her and take her back. She said she'd do anything to make this right. I told her I believed she was sorry. Sorry that her behavior had consequences. Sorry that she was facing public humiliation. Sorry that her reputation was ruined. But I didn't believe she'd actually changed, just that she'd learned to hide her true nature better. Then I told her about the joint savings account she'd been secretly draining. I'd done the math. She'd taken almost $15,000 over 2 months, supposedly, for wedding expenses. But when I tracked down where the money really went, it painted a very different picture. Designer handbags, jewelry for herself, expensive dinners with friends where she'd picked up the entire bill to look generous. She'd even paid for a weekend spa retreat and told her friends it was a gift from her generous fiancé. She'd been using our money to buy social status and admiration. Her face went white as I laid out the evidence. She tried to explain that she'd planned to pay it back, that she'd wanted to look good for our wedding guests, that she'd thought I wouldn't mind since we were getting married anyway. I told her she was right about one thing. She would get exactly what she deserved. I pulled out a small box and placed it on the table between us. Inside was the plastic ring from the jewelry shop. I'd gone back and bought it from the owner, who'd been happy to sell me his newest tourist attraction. I told her this ring represented the value of a relationship built on lies, and financial deception. She could keep it as a reminder of what happens when you mistake someone's bank account for their heart. She started crying again, begging me not to leave her. She promised she'd pay back every penny, go to therapy, sign a prenup, anything I wanted. She said the public humiliation had taught her a lesson, and she'd never be materialistic again. I stood up to leave and told her that if she'd really learned her lesson, she'd stop trying to manipulate me into fixing the consequences of her own choices. A person who truly understood what they'd done wrong wouldn't be sitting here trying to negotiate their way out of accountability. As I walked away, she called after me that she loved me and always had. I didn't turn around, but I did hear her finally break down completely. The plastic ring was still sitting on the table when I left. Final update. It's been 2 weeks since the coffee shop meeting, and the story has finally started to die down online. My ex tried reaching out a few more times through mutual friends, but I made it clear that the relationship was over and any communication should go through lawyers regarding the money she took from her joint account. She eventually returned most of the stolen money, probably on advice from her lawyer. Her job situation stabilized once the internet moved on to the next viral story, though she apparently had to sit through several HR meetings about professional conduct and social media presence. The whole experience taught me something valuable about red flags I'd been ignoring. The expensive tastes weren't the real problem. It was the entitlement, the secret spending, and the complete disregard for our shared financial goals. Someone who truly loved me would have wanted to build a future together, not bankrupt me for one perfect day. I've started dating again, and I'm amazed by how refreshing it is to be with someone who suggests splitting the bill and gets excited about simple, inexpensive dates. My current girlfriend actually laughed when I told her the plastic ring story and said she'd rather have something meaningful than something expensive. The jewelry shop owner still has the original plastic ring on display with a little sign that says, "True love versus true cost." He told me it's become quite the conversation starter, and several couples have come in to buy simple, affordable rings after seeing it. As for my ex, I heard through mutual friends that she's been telling people a different version of the story. One where I was financially abusive and she was the victim of a cruel public humiliation. I'm not surprised. People who refuse to take accountability rarely learn from their mistakes. But that's not my problem anymore. I dodged a bullet that would have cost me a lot more than $45,000. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or planned. It's just showing someone exactly who they really are and letting the consequences speak for themselves. The plastic ring cost me $2. The lesson it taught both of us was priceless. This was Whisper Wire, where silence isn't weakness, it's the ultimate revenge. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and join the journey. Because tomorrow's whisper might just become the story of your life. Thanks for watching. Please like this video and subscribe my channel. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments.